Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know. I'm Lisa Callahan.
And I'm Kari Morin. And today we are here with such a dear friend and a special guest to cover a topic near and dear to us and to so many of our listeners. And that is navigating healthy relationships, which also has the title from a quote from one of my favorite movies.
Mawwiage. A dweem within a dweem.
The blessed arrangement.
Oh my God, it just never fails. And if you don't know what we're talking about the Princess Bride.
Yes.
Yes, so I'm so excited. We have been talking to Stacy about being on the pod since the get-go, but we've put her in with this lovely month of love and relationships. And so thank you so much for finally joining us.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Yay. So I'm just going to say a little bit, so sit back and have a sip of something, Stacy. But our dear friend Stacy Peasall is a women's relationship coach, a speaker, an author with 11 years of dedication to empowering women in their relationships. She's incredible. We know this firsthand. Her personal triumphs over sexual trauma, narcissism, domestic violence, and relationship struggles, strengthened by her faith and professional certifications in transformational life coaching and sex, love, and relationship coaching, have shaped her heartfelt approach.
Yeah, I mean, Stacy's mission is to inspire hope, helping women rebuild their self-esteem and develop really strong, fulfilling relationships that create empowering legacies for your kids. I mean, what is more important than that?
Oh, you just took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say, what could be more important than that? Wow, I just
Right?
got chills. Yeah. So, Stacy, can you start with us today by sharing, like, what led you on this journey to become a coach for other women with similar journeys and struggles?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's my story. It comes back to that. So my journey into coaching really stemmed from my own personal challenges in my own marriage. And I felt disconnected, I felt misunderstood. And honestly, I really just thought it was me and thought something was wrong with me. Like you look at everyone else, everyone looked like they're doing good, the movies, everything that you see. So I'm like, it must be me. And later, when I was connecting with other women, I realized, oh, once you start talking, you realize there's some themes, there's some common struggles here, and this pressure of being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, and from my challenges, I had to go through two divorces. I had to learn the hard way, and really just recognized that our model was flawed and struggling. I wasn't modeled healthy boundaries or self-care or even proper communication skills. And I learned the hard way that those are vital skills, and if you don't have those, you are going to be struggling. It's not about finding the perfect person or the person that it doesn't work that way. So I that's kind of how I had to learn that way. And really through my own struggles and challenges, once I read the books, did the courses, did all the things, I started to see some patterns and started to learn some things, and I decided I wanted to go back to school and figure this out. And really just I realized there's a communication gap. That's a big thing that I realized. And I wanted other women to feel valued and heard and connected and feel amazing in their marriages, not just with the girlfriends.
I love that. So when you decided to move into this realm, were you married to your current husband, or do you feel like what you learned helped this relationship that then turned into marriage?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. So it was really when I was single,
Okay.
after going through my second divorce. I was a health and life coach at the time, and loved helping women in that realm. But I just felt like this was an area that I needed to master for myself. I felt, like okay, I've got some great skills in health and feeling much better about how to feel empowered in my life and to be able to own my needs. But that relationship dynamic, it's kind of tricky. So I wanted to figure it out for myself. And once I did, of course, then I'm like, okay, other women need to know how to do this too.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about the fact that we all think we're the only one going through it. Again, that's the whole
Yeah.
reason of this pod, right? That's
Yeah.
exactly what is the beginning of all this is we all, for some reason, I mean, women are so communicative and yet
Yeah.
our struggles we keep to ourselves. But the
Yeah.
minute you open that Pandora's box, everybody else starts to go, yeah, curious.
Yeah.
So you provide coaching and support to women in their 30s and beyond who are seeking to heal their marriages, transform their relationships. And you have grown. I mean, Kari and I, we've known you for a long time. We're still connected in our own coaching circle. We've really seen you grow an amazing, impressive, supportive community where members can learn and grow together. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, originally when I started coaching in the relationship space, I was doing it individual one-on-one. And what I realized was that, there's only so much you can do in that container. And because relationship skills are, requires two people and it requires a lot of practice and, being able to, control your emotions and learn how to respond, learn how not to get triggered, be able to communicate what your needs are, what you want versus criticizing all the things that you don't want. So I realized that there needed to be a community aspect of it. And really, once I changed that model of just, having individual to the community, there were some women in the beginning that were a little bit hesitant because, we don't really like to air our dirty laundry. We want to pretend like everything's okay. But when they realized that it was a safe space and they realized, like myself, that they're not alone and that other women, when they were sharing their story, they're nodding their head and they could relate to it. That's when I really knew, okay, when you can have a safe, supportive network where you can share your experiences, then you can learn and grow together. And it's a lot more fun in community anyway.
And I think it's more exponential, like you go faster in
Mhm.
community.
Yeah, absolutely. So true.
Yeah, I think we all have this belief together that women transform in groups. They really
Yeah,
do. And
absolutely.
you mentioned something there that I was going to get to later, but I just want to go back to it when you said, not just with other women, but with their, in their relationships and their partnerships. It's so important that you're bringing a community together with that intention because
Mhm.
yes, I mean, obviously Lisa and I want a space where women are like learning how to or remembering how to include themselves or sometimes learning for the first time.
Yeah.
And the tone of of the people you're around will really either help or hinder that. So if you're with an intentional community and supportive people where you can vent and you can get what you need and understand you can't get everything from one person anyway, but
Yep.
like really with
True.
that intention, it really is so helpful to not only know that you're not alone, but to know that people are rooting for you as a couple.
Mm. Yes, absolutely. And think about it. A lot of women really don't have a healthy community environment, where women are lifting each other up and encouraging each other and giving hope. There's a lot of, kind of competition and bringing others down. So that's what I really love about this community.
Mm.
Full disclosure, sometimes there's something in the middle there that's just perfect, which is some memes and some oh my gosh, me too, because it does
Yep.
diffuse and then keep you from actually saying that to your partner, but it's also
Yeah.
just humor.
Yes.
Where it's
Yes.
not like I hate him, but like oh my gosh, this one thing, and then someone goes yep, and then you're over it.
Yeah, there's something about having a space, we always start with wins, but there, we do challenges and sharing our challenges and I let them vent because
Mhm.
if you vent to your partner, it's unless you've already just clarified that I just really just need to vent here, but if it's a personal event, not gonna go very well.
Yeah. And given that a lot of our listeners, not all, but a lot, the intention was, women in midlife
Yeah.
and beyond, but we really have the attention of, which is wonderful news for us, of women and men of all
Yeah.
ages. I'm curious, like, what are the common challenges that do come up for people that you're seeing? Like, are you seeing some real, is it, yeah, I don't actually want to, I was going to feed you some things, but I'm curious what you're going to say. Like, are you seeing some common themes that like come through and come to the surface?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've gotten busier and busier, and is what I've noticed, and the stress has really gone up. And so, when you look at a couple now, that's 30s and beyond, you've usually have, kids, there's career shifts, there's maybe health concerns, maybe they have aging parents, there's so many things that are happening in midlife that add an extra level of stress. And when your kids are younger, it's a different environment. Women usually are more connected if they're involved in the school. Maybe there's some friendships. So they have a feeling of connection, and they don't necessarily miss it so much in their relationship with their husband then, because, they're so busy and occupied with the kids. And then all of a sudden the kids are growing up, middle school, or they're driving. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's some things missing here. And so I see a lot of women who are, making the priority of their kids. And so they're off doing that. And then when that's kind of, when they don't need them as much anymore, there is definitely a hole there. So definitely some challenges.
Mm. And just in that beautiful answer, I heard time, kids, money, career, sandwich generation, sex.
Yeah.
Maybe I just put sex there. Maybe
I didn't hear
No, there
sex,
is-
but I think it
Yeah.
works.
Where's their time for that?
Well, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Where is there time for that? And, and I think a lot of times, we want to try to create a peaceful home environment. We want to still kind of keep that. And so we're trying to control the environment of it. And if you're trying to constantly control, you're going to be coming off as being critical. And if you're being critical and controlling, that is not a good combination.
Mm.
Is there, since we did just presence the fact that it's not just about women in midlife, but it
Yeah.
is younger. I mean, we know at least we have people, as actually some of Charlotte's friends listen. So let's go all the way back to the late
Yeah.
teens, right? What would you say to the younger women who maybe are not quite in these deep relationships yet, but what would you prep them for as they start to get into these kinds of relationships?
So great questions, because one of the things I tell my members all the time is, we weren't taught these things in school. We just weren't. And it would be really great if we could. So yes, if you're younger, what I would say is really getting clear about what your own values and beliefs are, so that when you're expressing needs or you're expressing boundaries, you're clear about what that is, so that you can communicate that. If you're not, and you tend to maybe if you tend to be a people pleaser, or you tend to kind of try to make someone else happy, you'll got to compromise your own self for the other person, get lost in the relationship, and you'll wonder why the other person's not meeting your needs, but you're not really asking for it. So get clear on what you want, what those are, helping to set some boundaries, and then just have a clear understanding that there's always got to be two perspectives. And it's not truth, it's just perspective. And so somebody's viewpoint, and I'll just generalize when we're generalizing a little bit with men and women, their viewpoint's going to be a little bit different based upon their own needs. And so, men tend to be driven by safety and security and, providing that. And so they do that through their work. And women are not driven in that particular way as far as importance. The importance to them is the connection with the relationship. And so sometimes there can be so many misunderstandings, but it's about just really misunderstanding the perspective. And if you can take the time to understand and operate from love and compassion versus judgment and blame, your conversation's going to go so much better.
So understanding that even if you're in disagreement with your partner, it doesn't make their view is still valid. And so if you can just almost set aside for a hot minute your own thoughts and just sort of get on their realm or whatever, you don't have to agree. You just don't have, you can't judge and and tell them they're bad, or it's just going to go downhill from there.
Yeah, and that's a really great point because we do tend to look at differences as is there a right or a wrong way? I often hear that, tell me, am I right here? And we just naturally, want to do that, and that's how our brains operate. But if we can switch that to say, okay, if this person that I love and care about, is the person that I want to be with, if I truly believe that they have love for me, then I can also make an assumption that they're doing their best and they're coming from a place of love. And so if we can look at it from that angle versus they're not trying to piss me off or trying to make me angry or all of those types of things. I mean, unhealthy stuff that's different, toxic, but we're just talking about, with the intention of that. And if we can make it just a paradigm shift that they're actually doing their best and maybe their skill set isn't quite the same as ours, but they are doing the best. And you don't have to always agree to side with somebody because you can have empathy and compassion for someone and say, oh gosh, I'm sorry that you're going through that. That must really be rough for you, without pointing out the fact that, hey, if you were on time more often, you wouldn't be going through this. Like, that's
Empathy
judgment.
without criticism. Yeah. Without judgment. That's true.
Yeah.
Um,
But you don't have to, it doesn't mean that you approve of the behavior either, or that you agree, but you can still show empathy.
Yeah.
yeah, so many questions coming to me at once. Let me see.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying because so a lot of people, a lot of my peers, not me, I still have 2 at home, 2 out of 3 at home. A lot of my peers have their kids are gone, and so they actually do have more time for each other. And it isn't
Yeah.
that there's conflict, there is time, there's just a lot of different interests, and they don't
Yeah.
totally overlap. I
Mhm.
mean, they don't want out, but they don't, like I remember someone saying, sometimes people split up not because it was bad, but because there wasn't enough good. And I'm not
Mhm.
thinking anyone who's coming to mind is splitting up, but I think there's a lot of leaning away in like towards friends or things you're more used to versus like the awkwardness of rediscovering and figuring that out. So like, do you have that come up too? Like kind of like, it's not bad, it's just we're strangers, or we're not strangers, but we like different things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that sometimes what can happen is if you are raising kids, and so in the middle of all of that, you're not investing in your relationship, then you can definitely start to grow apart and start to do things separately and really operate from an individual mindset. So I would say, to that person that maybe is feeling disconnected, where maybe there's not a lot of conflict, is there, can you find some sort of common ground with some, maybe it's just small things. It doesn't have to be large, and really have conversations around what does that connection look like for you. Sometimes having that connection of maybe just having a morning and an evening routine of how you check in with each other, or how you share your day, or just little things like that can make a huge difference in connection. So I think it's really around the quality versus the quantity of time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Because Darren and I did a really good job of still, not when the kids were little. I mean, he would tell you, this is probably where he's like, I told you not to air all our dirty.
All the dirty laundry, here it comes.
But oh well, he's gonna listen. He's gonna be like, God damn it. But there was times when the kids were little, and we didn't have a regular babysitter, and I didn't want to spend the money for somebody I didn't know, and so there were a lot of times where we did separate things. And he more than me, because my separate things were going out with friends, and his separate things were like going to perhaps a play that he wrote or something like that, a one night deal. And I didn't go, and he felt unsupported. Then the kids got older, and we found somebody. And so for about our last 3 years in Chicago, we just hired this woman once a month. She already knew, like, here's the date. So we just gave it to her. And so I do think as we get closer to being empty nesters, so close.
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking forward to it.
I think
Like,
Yeah.
you two are already really pretty good about your dates, your day dates
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. We do love day dates.
I think that's good because you do have some really different interests, and then
Oh
you
yeah,
like find those ones that are similar,
yeah,
and that's what yeah, I mean, it feels like one of the things you talk about, Stacy, that I love is when you're appealing to people, it's like you can make a lot of change even if your spouse isn't on board or even knows that you're doing it. Of
yeah,
course, like I always love what I'm pretty sure it was Chris Rock who said, like it takes two people to like create and fix a marriage. Have you ever tried moving a couch by yourself? You know, and I always love that, and that cracked me up. And yet, I actually think like what you're doing is that beautiful thing that we as coaches know. It's like give them what they want and what they need. So, can you talk a little bit about just like how you're helping women work on themselves and how that creates the change?
Yeah. And I think that is a a myth, so to speak, that it takes two to tango. And yes, and it really only takes one empowered person to make a difference in a relationship. So, you can look at mathematically, if you change one element, A plus B equals R, if you make one change here, it's going to change the outcome. And you don't know what that outcome will be. Like, so we can't guarantee, I can't guarantee that everyone's going to have a happy marriage and that it's going to stay together and all of that, but because no one can, we can't control someone else. But what we can do is I work with them, the very first step is owning your power. So that's around, finding out what are your needs and desires, what lights you up, what excites you about just you and being empowered in that position and owning your powers, self-care and setting healthy boundaries. So that's really an important aspect of it because we usually can look at somebody else and we can analyze them and we can see what's wrong with them and how to change them, and it's so easy to want to be able to do that. I know that's what I did. But for our own selves, it's like, wait a minute, how do you do it for yourself? Because sometimes you can be so close. And so that's where I come in with the women in the community, is helping them to do what they've kind of already been doing for everyone else and doing it for themselves. I have a phrase that I use. I say, just work on your own suitcase, not the other person's suitcase. So we all have our own baggage and we take it with us. And if you don't resolve it in one relationship, trust me, it's going to follow you to the next
And get
relationship.
heavier, get a bigger bag.
Exactly. But what ends up happening is we tend to try to solve other people's problems, put it in our suitcase. Let me see if I could solve that for you. And then before you know it, you're doing all the things and you're exhausted and
Mhm.
yeah.
And do you notice that, do women tell you that as they work on themselves and their love relationship gets better, that other relationships, work relationships, friendships, like does it all trickle down and everything gets better?
Yeah, it really does. When you have the confidence, when you learn a new skill set and you have that confidence and you discover, oh, I can communicate now and I can communicate my needs and I can do it without pissing off the other person or creating a huge argument spiral, then you can start to use those same skills in other areas.
So this is just life changing all the way around.
It really is. And I love the fact that, you know, that they're able to have an impact on their kids as well. So the majority of women that I work with are like me. They didn't have, a healthy even marriage to look upon. Like my parents were really, really great roommates and they never fought. And that's what I thought marriage was about. There wasn't any intimacy and love, but they just got along really great. And I'm like, oh, this should be easy. I was in for a little bit of a shock.
I love this and Lisa's question because it reminds me of that, that thing we say, like you get what you tolerate. And the way
Mm.
you're describing it is you really can stop tolerating something without it being like putting up a wall or passive aggressive or aggressive, like by really learning how to communicate and invite and include versus, make someone else wrong. And that's brilliant. And I don't know how you
Yeah.
figure that out on your own.
Yeah, it can be challenging, but we all have kind of our go-tos. And so, I find a lot of women tend to either shut down, in the middle of conflict, or they tried to kind of yield a little bit, or maybe they try to fight back. And if you're triggered to begin with and you're trying to continue a conversation, it's really challenging.
Mm.
And so I teach them how to set healthy boundaries on that and just, and give themselves their own kind of time out to say, okay, let me process this. Let me get a better understanding of what's going on here. And then, you can rant about your complaint, journal it, bring it into another community, but don't bring that rant when you're trying to have a solution, when you're looking at solving a problem.
So what's some of your favorite success stories?
Oh my goodness. So many. So I just had a woman that I started working with her in May, and her husband had left, and he said, I'm 90% sure that I'm done with the marriage. So I'm like, 95.5 is what he told her. And so he left. We started working together, and he just came back early November. And so that's a really just amazing, because he left and came back. I have several other women that, I have one right now that wasn't engaged, and now she's engaged and they're working towards, being married. And I think my favorite, and I can't just say one person because it happens to quite a few women, is when they all of a sudden like rediscover their sparkle again. Like I get to see them on social media and you see just the regular pictures, and then all of a sudden like you can just see the difference. Like they have like a smile of just glowing confidence, and you can tell they're feeling good about themselves. That's my favorite.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that is you as well, right? Like, I mean, the three of us have known each other for a long time. And even though I did not know your story back when your story was happening,
Yeah.
I definitely know the day you walked in and I was like, well, that's what's going on with Stacey there, and it was like a little fairy dust just came right over you. It was just like, lee, 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 lee.
Well, Stacy and I were in that sex, love, and relationship training when that was unfolding. And that was
Oh, wow.
where like you and I, Rihanna, and you were sharing like, ooh, this guy.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
that was it was incredible to see the unfolding of like all of the letting go and the letting in you were doing just with you and yourself. That
Mm.
manifested that and brought that in, and like watch you navigate that, and with so much love for yourself. It was
Oh,
incredible. What a beautiful model for others.
thank you. I love that reflection. Oh, I'm going to receive that. Thank you.
Um, so talk a little bit more about your community. First, let's say it so people can go and join, and then tell us a little bit more about what you've created, both the free version plus the premium version.
Yeah. So I started with so I have two different communities. I have which are Facebook group communities. So I have Save My Marriage, which is my free community, and I do weekly live trainings in there and interact with women and really just helping them to get a supportive, safe feeling and feel what it's like to be in a community, because there's lots of other groups out there and that are not very safe. So mine is very, very safe and secure. I personally look at every single person that comes in and screen them and make sure that they're a good fit. So that's the free community. And then I have the Wise Woman community, which is my paid community. And it's more of an intimate setting. And we do, coaching twice a week in the community. I just did a workshop today on one of my pillars. I have a relationship restoration 5-pillar system that I walk them through. And so we did a workshop today on co-communication, so which is a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Are you seeing a lot of connections happen there between women as well?
I am. Yeah, that's
Right.
what's so beautiful is to see the friendships and to see the support. I love when, they post in the group because of course, they can post questions or their wins or rants, whatever it is. And I just love seeing the other women come in and cheer them on or say, hey, you've got this and you can do it. And, we keep kind of track of how they're doing and how their progress is so that they feel a sense of accountability. Because, when you're doing this on your own, sometimes you can just feel like you take, 2 steps forward, quite a few back. And so having that community and having women say, look, you just did this. Like, one of my members just had a difficult conversation. She's been wanting to have a will done in with her marriage for I think 8 years. And that's how long it's taken to get. And so she was able to go through this process and we helped her get through it. And we're all celebrating her because she was able to get that.
I love that. We already talked about communication but what are some of the other tips that you would sort of have around nurturing and maintaining healthy relationships?
It's definitely around that connection piece. So I think it's really important to have some type of a ritual, like you were saying, Lisa. You guys do, dates, and you invest in your relationship. Most people don't do that, so most people don't take the time to invest in it. They think, oh, well, we're in love, and then there you go, and it doesn't work that way. So I would say, investing in your relationship, having weekly dates if you can. If you're not in a position where weekly is, totally not going to happen, try monthly. Do something to be able to connect together. Have a morning or an evening kind of a ritual where you're connecting, where you're sharing. So you're not just kind of, passing each other in the hall and turning into roommates. And, if you're finding that there's a lot of distractions like social media or TV, look for ways to be able to, maybe bring out the games and dust them off or something. Do things that do create a little bit more of an intimate connection where you're speaking and talking to each other.
I have one of those games with cards from Esther Perel called like Where to Meet
Yeah.
Again. And
Yeah.
it makes me think of you. Let's talk about sex. Like, do you feel like women in your community, is that a topic? Like they worry they're not having it enough, or they worry they want more than their partner does, or vice versa? Like, how does, like, what's the conversation around that so that women aren't feeling embarrassed or worried?
Yeah, I mean, we're sex and money. Everyone's like, "Ooh, I don't want to talk about those topics." Let's not
We
talk about.
do.
We do.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about it. Let's dive into it. Well, I honestly, I have several different, one of the things that I have that helps women in there is I have a lot of different communication templates for these particular topics, so, my pillar 4 is all about reigniting that spark, about creating that intimacy. Because if we don't have that, if you don't have the intimacy, then you are kind of like roommates. And then there can be differences, and there's also different seasons. So, with midlife comes some different kinds of challenges, both for men and for women. And really, expressing what your desires are. And, some of the things that I learned, and carried it as well in that sex, love, and relationship, course was really about owning your own pleasure too.
Mm.
And so when we talk about owning our own needs, that's part of it. And so when you can own your pleasure and have it not be like this taboo or you're always waiting for someone else to fulfill your needs, someone else is not going to fulfill your needs all the time. But when we're talking about like kind of sex, it's like, okay, can we do that? And so that's just the dialogue that I would invite you in, depending upon, where you're at in your relationship, because sometimes couples don't necessarily talk about that. So you want to work your way into having those conversations because it's important.
Yeah.
What I love about all these steps and your pillars is I love how gently but also directly and beautifully you're like, let's start with you. Like it's an inside job, right? Like own your
Yep.
pleasure, own your happiness, own all of that. It reminds me of conversations I've been having with my oldest who's in a relationship, and just about how our generation and all previous generations really thought like our whole purpose and like success, like our success as parents, our success as spouses is happiness, the other person's happiness.
Mhm.
And that's such an impossible thing. Like we can't make someone happy. We can't even keep them safe. We can convey love. We can, create safety in certain ways, like safety with feelings, but like
Yeah.
we want to convey unconditional love and learn how to get our needs met. But I think that the greatest thing that you're offering here and reminding me, which brings me to that conversation, is that as soon as you understand that all emotions are welcome, then you're going to get to the joy part, the pleasure part more easily, versus like
Mm.
thinking we're failing if we don't both feel happy.
Yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
love this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And
Well,
with those types of connections, or with owning your needs and owning your pleasure, it definitely puts you in a position to feel more in control. Because what I find is a lot of people don't ask for what they want. They don't express that. You've been together for quite some time. Sometimes you can finish each other's sentences, but you assume that the other person should just know that you're feeling disconnected, or know that you want to go out and, go on a date, or know those things. I've said it. Now, can't they remember that that's what I need right now? And so, just giving permission that, okay, even if the other person isn't reading your mind, it's okay to express that and communicate it. And it's okay to do it more than once too.
I know you work with women. Has the thought ever crossed your mind into working with men? Because like when I hear this, and granted, the three of us come from a coaching space, we've learned all these things. But like I just think about some of the men I know that aren't asking those questions either, and
Mhm.
they're instead of saying, I feel lonely, or I feel sad, or I feel disconnected, they're just keep on keeping on. So,
Yeah.
I mean, is there any space, or are there any tips for the men that are listening?
Yes, great question too. What I think, and maybe this is true, so if you're a man listening, I'd be curious to see if this resonates. But what I've found and my husband has said this as well, is that there's a fear. So, if you're in a position where maybe you've communicated something and it didn't really come across the way that you intended, and you got criticized for it,
Mm,
they're going to make a little mental note of like, oops, not going to talk about that anymore. And then the more that kind of stacks up, there would much rather be quiet and not say anything at all, to kind of keep the peace, so that, they're not saying anything.
mm,
And most women do want you to talk. They want to know what's going on. And it can feel like pulling teeth. And understanding that maybe the woman is not doing a very good job in expressing it. And so if you can kind of just understand that beneath the criticism, or what feels like nagging, is actually someone wanting to express their needs but not doing it in a very healthy way. And
mm,
that conflict is not bad. So even, having that conflict is not a bad thing. If you can work together through that, that's where the connection is on the other side of the conflict. And so if you hold back and shut down because trying to be respectful, and you're making sure that you're not going to say anything, it's better to just kind of give yourself like, hey, I can't talk right now, because I don't think I'm going to say anything that's very nice, or I need to put myself in a timeout. Can we come back to this and talk about it when we feel a little more calm? Because if you can do that extra little step, that it's not a big one. I know it may feel like a big one, but it's really not. That extra step to be able to talk, to communicate and talk, it's going to go a long way.
I love that conflict is an invitation to intimacy.
Yeah, it
mm.
really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And criticism and controlling and shutting down are like kryptonite to men. So there's no intimacy
Cock
on the other
blockers.
side of that.
You cock blockers.
Yes.
Well, and I'm thinking about you saying early on about, your parents they never fought. They got along great. That was modeled for you, right? So
Yep.
I think there's real value to model, you know, conflict. So your kids see that being in a healthy relationship doesn't mean everything's unicorns and rainbows, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that piece of it is really important for kids to see as well. yeah, especially if it's done in a way like you teach and
Yeah.
coach on, and it's productive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because we all have conflict, but if we feel that conflict is bad and that there's shame around conflict and everything should just be peaceful and happy and joyful and unicorns all the time, like it doesn't exist. It's not how
Right.
life is. And so you do, if you can model, like it's okay to disagree. It's okay to be a little bit annoyed or irritated with the other person. You're living together. It's gonna happen.
I mean, again, I think we would, I feel lucky. I assume Carrie does too. Stacy, I'm curious for you. Like I've always said one of the best things about going through my coaching certification is I became a better mom. And I
Yeah.
do think that is, I am now seeing the fruits of that labor, specifically with Charlotte. And she is so proud of the way she communicates with the couple of boys that she's been in relationships with, even the one that didn't work out. Like that is the thing she always comes back to. We were so good at communication, and he
Mm.
was too, which was lucky. And now
Yeah.
she's moving into a new relationship, same thing. Like she comes home to tell me not that they kissed, but that they had a really good conversation. And I'm like,
That's great.
here,
I
I'm like,
know.
if that's all I ever teach her, like that's it. That's
Yeah.
it in a nutshell. Do you feel like your kids, I mean, I know your kids are older, right? Like your youngest is my oldest, right?
Right.
Leanne's
Yeah.
age, 21, 22.
Yeah.
So she saw a lot of different things, but like, where is it now for them to see you in this marriage in such a different, handling it so differently?
It's a huge difference. And,
Yeah.
like your daughter, she has communication skills and then she gets frustrated when she's communicating with other kids her age because she's like, what?
Yeah.
Why are
Right.
you trying to act like that? Like, can't you just act mature here?
All right.
Can't
So
we just
there's the
have a
downside for
conversation?
them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and she has a lot of people that come to her with, what would you
Mhm.
do here? What would this? So it's definitely the coaching has rubbed off for sure.
Yeah.
My son
Yeah.
just mentioned something about one of his friends. He's like, well, he can be pretty emotionally immature. And I was like, well, that's funny. But yeah.
Oh, I love it. Um, Anything else you'd like to add? Any other tips or anything you want to point out that you feel like is sort of a misconception about relationships that's really brought to the forefront in your coaching?
Yeah, I think that there's a vulnerability piece that a
Mm,
lot of us really fear. And we tend to make what we feel vulnerable right or wrong. So there's a lot of that. And so, if you can really work on your own things that, whatever, if you're feeling like you've got, you've viewing it as a weakness, I'm not calling it a weakness, but a lot of times people view it as that. Really do some work around that. That's an invitation to really lean into that so that, you're not, projecting that onto the other person and it doesn't really cause, additional conflict in the relationship. I know for me, I'll give an example. So I'm highly sensitive, always have been, and, always felt like that was a bad thing and, crying all the time or taking things personal. And I've learned to have more resilience in that area, but also to utilize my sensitivity as a strength to be empathic with people and to, really turn that around. And so if someone now said something like, "Oh, you're so sensitive," I'd be like, "Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that." Instead of, in the past, that would have been devastating to me.
mm,
And
Yeah.
so,
I've always
those
been waiting for the opportunity to be like, you're right. And you're welcome.
exactly. Yeah. And that's that piece there when you can start owning, like, what we're taught, all parts of yourselves. And that's the healing aspect, what needs to be done, in a relationship too, because you're going to bring up there and you're going to wonder why the other person, if you've got, more of a, anxious attachment style and your partner is more avoidant and you're wondering like, well, why are they treating me that? Why are they so cold? Or, why don't they understand my feelings? Then there's some understanding and awareness that'll happen.
mm,
So
so
good.
good. you're just the perfect person to do this. And I think I do think it's because your life experience is such that it's not like you're like, oh, I'm on my first marriage and it's been amazing. Like you've gone through it and you have learned how to empower yourself,
Yeah.
which then, it's like nobody suffers when any one of us are empowered. But is there, I'm curious if there are women who that empowerment piece scares them, or they think, gosh, why isn't this happening faster? Like, Kari and I talk about healing happens in between the sessions and in the silent moments. It doesn't happen overnight. So how do you manage that kind of, I'm going to say resistance, even though it may be just fear?
It's fear.
Yeah.
I would say I'm constantly talking about it. So
Okay.
I think one of my favorite things to do is just normalize the fears and our limiting beliefs and our conditioning. I mean, we could have a whole nother episode on all that conditioning and things too, but ooh. So I just normalize it, and so that they realize it's not about you. I had a woman in the beginning that, because we do Zoom calls, that didn't never came on camera. And now she comes on camera.
Mm.
And, I see her in that light and you can see the growth.
Mm.
And so just normalizing, like, it's okay if you don't want to come on camera. It's okay if you don't make every single call. Like, you're in the right place where you're meant to be, and just really helping them to step into it, not avoiding change, and not trying to push through it either, because they want to make it happen faster so they can make the pain go away. And we know
Right.
it doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
I know. I love that because and it reminds me of what we are always saying. Like, I can believe in you as your coach, and I can hear that you want, that this is what you want from the people who matter most to you. And none of it's
Yeah.
going to happen until you give it to you first, until you feel that way about you first. Right. So we show the people around us how to love us, how to treat us by the way we talk to and treat ourselves.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Yeah.
Sounds like such a beautiful, safe, and enriching connection you're offering for women to do that at whatever pace they need to. So an
Yes.
exciting thing
Yeah.
you're offering.
Yeah. No, it's really rewarding to be able to see, women step into their power and own their needs and set those boundaries and do it from a place of love. Because that's, like I said, we're not necessarily modeled that. Someone was asking me the other day, and, can you tell me a TV show or a movie that models an empowered woman, like in her feminine power? And I was like, and not bitchy, that was the other part of it. And I'm like,
Mm.
I had a hard time trying to figure out, like,
This is totally going to age me, but I immediately was like, Murphy Brown.
oh yeah,
Yeah, although she didn't have a relationship. I mean, so I'm not,
still
I mean,
quite
she
a bit of
was
masculine
empowered,
energy
but
though.
yeah. I mean, I always go to Sex and the City, and obviously Carrie Bradshaw wasn't like that at the beginning, but for her to end up with Big, I mean, there
Yeah.
was at some point something shifted for her, maybe around the first movie. I
Yeah.
don't know, but like, I do think of that relationship, all considering everything they went through. In some ways, she had that same arc of like putting him first, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
and not having good communication. I mean, heck, we didn't even know his name until the end of the first movie,
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think it was actually the very last episode of the
that's
series.
right. And she opens her phone and it says John.
Yeah.
I've been watching that series again. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, not only was it not modeled in our homes, it wasn't modeled on the way we all learn things anyways, which is television. And I don't know
No.
that it's being modeled now in social media or any of those things, so the biggest takeaway for me is what impact this has on the people around you,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
kids in particular.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're right. When one person's empowered, that's the overflow, inviting everybody else to change the way they're operating as well, right? The way they're talking about themselves and thinking about themselves and communicating their needs. It's being modeled.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of times what we were modeled is that it's when you're asking for your needs to be met, it's needy. And so you see a lot of women kind of tiptoe a little bit like, you think we could do this, or it'd be okay, or they're kind of asking permission, or there's this kind of this passive, energy, and it doesn't make them feel good. But then when they try to model more masculine energy and kind of go, straight direct and other things, then they get, huge pushback. And they're like, I don't know how do I do this?
Yeah, I have such an issue with that whole thing about needy, this like kind of patriarchal like this
Yeah.
negative way of looking at it, because we are humans. We are meant to be interconnected and meet each other's needs, but I think the valuable piece you're interjecting here is you do have needs. Nobody's going to meet them until you know how to meet them yourself first, until you model it. So like, it's not needy to say this is what I would like in a relationship.
Yep.
I do this for myself, and it would be really lovely if I could get that from you as well, right? And I want to give that to you, and I want to hear what you need. And there's such a different tone to it. Like what we called needy is really like, you're responsible for me feeling good about myself, versus like, I feel good about myself, and if we're going to be in a relationship, this is how I want to be treated.
Which I think is super sexy. I mean, to me, that's the way you become super sexy and I'm not even necessarily talking about sex, but it is so attractive when you are around someone, man or a woman, who isn't bragging, but understands their value. Like, that is just so attractive.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think bragging is attractive. I think, yes, you just said confidence is sexy. I think bragging is attractive. I don't think people do it enough. And maybe somebody who does it too much, that isn't attractive. But I just don't think people do it enough. They don't celebrate.
I don't see. I always think of to me, bragging is needy, whereas stepping in, owning your greatness is sexy. And I don't think, and I think so. Saying, I'm good at this, blah, whatever. To me, that's not bragging. That's just acknowledging that you fucking rock. That's my definition of it.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So we're going to put all of your links and all the things in the posts and the notes, but tell everyone how they can work with you.
Absolutely. So I have a relationship restoration accelerator membership and a core membership. So two different price points to be able to work. So if you kind of want to have a sneak peek and just kind of check it out, you could do the core membership, or the accelerator membership basically includes everything, all the communication bundle and all of the script and all of the access to me. So really depending upon how they want to work with me. And then I do private one-on-one coaching as well.
Nice. And then your free, say again, the free Facebook group that they can apply to be part of.
Yeah, the free Facebook group is Save My Marriage. It's a women's community. Yeah.
And we will link all of this in our social media and also on our link tree. If you're listening the week it comes out, and for that whole week, you're going to find links to Stacy's community and to contact her directly. And or you're going to find that in any of our posts related to this episode. So I'm excited for people to connect with you, because I can imagine anyone listening is like, I could use some help.
100%. That's what I was thinking. Like, if there's any one of these things that you found yourself nodding along as you were listening, reach out to Stacy. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of like things that I don't think people talk about. And you're just the perfect person to be coaching on all of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been so fun to have you on. So last week, Kari and I shared our own version of Mawwiage, since we've both been together with our spouses for a very long time. And then next week, we're going to have on Marie Jefferson Jones, and she is going to talk about how to date yourself, even if you are in a relationship. So a very nice companion piece to Stacy, I think, because it's about, again, putting yourself first for sure. Stacy, would you like to share your song lyrics this week?
Yes, I love this part of your show. So I chose the Wise Woman song because I have the Wise Woman community.
Love it.
And really, it's really about, empowering the feminine core essence in a strong way, like what we've been talking about. And that's what this song is all about. And my favorite line is she's a real wise woman with so much love to give. She gives so much because she stays in touch with what her truest nature is. And what's important to me about that is she's just not just giving, giving, giving like we're modeled, but she's doing it with her truest nature. So she's being true to herself.
Yeah,
And
those
it's
lyrics give me chills. Holy moly, that's like you wrote that song.
and it's a fun little upbeat song, and it really just it's about being empowered and showing your true essence with that, and showing your beauty behind that as well.
So Jason Mraz, and again, we do now have started our season 2 playlist. So go look for the Things We Know playlist season 2, and this will be on there, and we'll add each week as we do. So we have season 1 complete. Season 2's already started. So go and listen to all these amazing songs that Kari and I and our guests bring to your knowledge. Love it.
Stacy,
fun.
thank you so much for being here. Before we go, is there anything else? Do you have any final thoughts or anything we didn't touch on that you're burning to share?
Oh my goodness. I would just, I think one of the things that I like to tell women in my community all the time is that this is a process. And so if you are just now becoming aware of things that you've already been doing in the past that maybe, you're not really proud of, or you're wanting to improve with skills, just give yourself some grace, give yourself some compassion, just like you would a friend, your best friend, and approach it from a place of love and compassion. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to connect with others that are there, because you're not alone. Most of the women in my community are nodding their head at things, and it just gives you a way to be able to feel much stronger.
I love it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you again so much for being here. I feel like it took us way too long, but this is exactly the right month and exactly the right time to have you on.
Yes.
We'd love to have you back and talk more about that conditioning piece, because you're right, that could be an entire podcast for sure.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about conditioning is we don't realize how we've been conditioned, the things that we've been doing. And we think it's serving us, and it's not. So yes, we would
Yes.
love to have you back to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Would be happy to. Thank you so much, ladies.
You are so welcome. So again, join us next week when we come back with Marie Jefferson Jones. And
if
Kari?
you found today's episode inspiring, I don't know how you couldn't have if you were actually listening. So please consider sharing it with a friend who might enjoy it too. Listen to it again if you need to. And as always, be sure to like and follow the pod wherever you listen so that you won't miss an episode.
Excellent. Thanks again, Stacy. And we will all see you back here next week.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.